Your perception of a criminal is wrong. When I mention criminal, just a word, immediately in your head there must be some sort of a person, like a stereotype that jumps in your head, and I will discuss that a bit more later. But just know, regardless of how progressive or woke you are, you have this preconceived notion within your head that is there, and it's definitely a problem. So, for the starters, millions around the world, millions, are in prison on victimless, damageless drug charges. Mainly cannabis, plenty of other things, but mainly cannabis. These are people being sentenced, taking up taxpayer money, taking up spaces in prison because of possession, basically. Possession and distribution, though, distribution does have the grey areas where it can be dangerous, but when it's some drugs like cannabis, like, genuinely, there's no issue with that. Like, calm down a bit. The war on drugs had so taken that out of proportion. Secondly, there's thousands of people around the world aged 20-ish, 19, 20, in prison because they had consensual, happy, willing relationships with someone 13 to 20 months younger than them. 20 months, not even 2 years. This person is in prison because they were in a relationship when they were 20 with someone who was just about to turn 18, when they were 19 and someone who was just about to turn 18. If that's stupid, the maturity level peaks at 17. So basically, it's 18 and 20, that's fine. There is no problem with that. And then there are countless unnecessary lapses and recalls on parole. Which, if you don't know, a recall on parole is basically when a person is out and they are seemingly following the majority of their restrictions, but the coalition decides maybe it's a bit iffy and decides to pull them back into either, debate on prison or actual prison again for non-violation but suspected violation, basically. And if you think, let's compare this to some other things, a fraction, less than about 10%, definitely less than 10%. In my head it's jumping to say 1%, but I don't think that's entirely accurate. Less than 10% of reported sexual assaults, rapes, any form of sex crimes, less than 10% goes to court, and abortedly less than that are actually convicted or end in some time served. That is abysmal compared to the thousands in prison for these consensual relationships with a bare minimum age gap, okay? Barely any reported rapists go to prison. Less than 10% of reported go to court. Less of that 10% are convicted, yes? Now, another crime that people don't even know happens, but it's probably one of the biggest crimes and one of the most financially insane crimes. It is where the majority of stolen money goes. Wage theft. Wage theft is fucking huge. There is not a major company in any major country not in some way guilty of wage theft. It is so prevalent and people don't even realise it. Wage theft is basically when the hires up in a company slowly, bit by bit, trim off bits of wages to keep for their own personal gain. And it is, of course, an attack directly on workers' rights. It is illegal because it's a crime, and it is probably the worst thing you can do. These people are working for you and you're taking their earned money. And there are two types or avenues of crime that have been on an intense, insane increase these last 5-10 years, yet the policing on them is abysmal. White collar crime and cybercrime. Cybercrime isn't even policed at all. They haven't even caught the people responsible. They don't even know the people responsible for the big Sony hack 7 years ago. And everyone was like, when the big Twitter hack happened and they arrested someone within a week, they were like, oh my god, they're so good at arresting this person who must have had such great security because he was so technologically advanced. It was able to this. They only caught him because he was boasting about it publicly online. There was no genuine policing there. He flung himself at the police. The police do not know how to police actual cybercrime. And white-collar crime is, sophisticated, mob-type, gang-type, huge cooperation crime. Similar to wage theft, but on a 10 times extreme. And that has been going on, always been going on, very prevalent in the 80s, but now it is at mental stages and it is not governed. You think politicians are involved, oligarchs are involved. Everyone who is someone is involved, knows about, or has seen forms of white-collar crime. No one gets arrested for it. Maybe you have one person getting arrested for it. You see, like, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested for a sort of white-collar crime, but he only went down because, again, he was very obvious with waving it in the faces of the public. If he hadn't gone down, we wouldn't have known about anything. So, as I'm saying, just to preface, basically, crimes that are punished are less severe, less prevalent, and less of a concern than these crimes that people completely get away with. Okay? Now that you've got that, and now that you know that, you still have a stereotype in your head. You're still thinking of this low-income, young, 16 to 24-year-old, poor, education, shady, delinquent type person, this young child, and that's your belief of what a criminal is. You've been demonised. I think it's the ghetto child. It's the ruffian on the corner. That's what you think a criminal is. That's what you have been forced to believe they are. You build that conception when they realistically are 1,000 times less likely, 1,000 times less convictioned to be damaging actual society. They may commit a crime. Sure, they may commit a crime, and if they get punished for that crime, grand. That's what you do, a crime that deserves punishment, you get a punishment. But you cannot say a criminal is this when this is abysmally small compared to the 10 times 40-year-old white executives in these corporations getting away with these crimes like it's nothing. Your perception of a criminal is wrong. The prison and criminal and legal system is flawed. They base it off such shady logic. Like, okay, arrested and convicted doesn't mean committed. There are so many crimes that are committed that are never arrested, never reported, never even heard of, especially in white-collar and cybercrime realms, basically. Yet, we know so much, and we build this stereotype because you're more likely to be arrested and convicted if you are fitting this stereotype. Why? One, because if there's a stereotype, people will act on that stereotype. But why? Then how did the stereotype start? Well, basically, the over-policing of these communities prevalent with these types of people is responsible. Ex-New York Police Department officers have come out and said near the end of every month when they have to meet a quota, but they're getting the end, they are demanded and reasoned to, they are given direct orders to go into these ethnic minority communities, the black, the Asian, the Jewish communities, and arrest people more severely on less severe crimes so they can meet the quota. This is the New York Police Department. This was going back to the 90s when the biggest centre of fucking serious white-collar crime was the New York Police Department. They peddled this stereotype, they ran with it, and they let these serious, genuinely dangerous, damaging crimes get away so they could further and cement this image of this young, dumb, poor, black criminal because they didn't want themselves to be shown as the criminal because they were criminals. Basically, the prison system is fucked as it is. You do not know what a criminal is. What you think a criminal is so much further removed from a serious criminal. Reevaluate your education. Look into this seriously and realise the people who say they're good guys are far from it.